The Colonel. What you have heard is true. I was in his house. His wife carried a tray of coffee and sugar. His daughter filed her nails. His son went out for the night. There were daily papers, pet dogs, a pistol on the cushion beside him. The moon swung bare in its black cord over the house. On the television there was a cop show. It was in English. Broken bottles were embedded in the walls around the house to scoop the kneecaps from a man's legs or cut his hands to lace. On the windows there were gratings like those in liquor stores. We had dinner, rack of lamb, good wine. A gold bell was on the table for calling the maid. The maid brought green mangoes, salt, a type of red. I was asked how I enjoyed the country. There was a brief commercial in Spanish. His wife took everything away. There was some talk then about how difficult it had become to govern. The parrot said hello on the terrace. The colonel told it to shut up and pushed himself from the table. My friend said to me with his eyes, "Say nothing." The colonel returned with a sack he used to bring groceries home. He spilled many human ears on the table. They were like dried peach halves. There is no other way to say this. He took one of them in his hands, shook it in our faces, dropped it into a water glass. It came alive there. "I am tired of fooling around," he said. "As for the rights of anyone, tell your people they can go fuck themselves." He swept the ears to the floor with his arm and held the last of his wine in the air. "Something for your poetry, no?" he said. Some of the ears on the floor caught the scrap of his voice. Some of the ears on the floor were pressed to the ground.
First, we want to analyze the title. A colonel is an important army officer of high rank. Before beginning to analyze the actual poem, we should note that it was written in May of 1978. This poem was written at the end of the Cold War, where tensions were still high because of the rapid spread of communism supported by the Soviet Union. Next, we'll dive right into the poem. The speaker acknowledges her audience right away and confirms the rumors heard are true. The speaker is a guest at the colonel's house. This is clearly a strongly patriarchal society, as the colonel's wife serves the guest and the colonel. The juxtaposition of normal household items like the newspaper and pet dog with a pistol shows the facade of normalness the colonel is trying to create to appease his guests. This is the first sense we get that everything is not normal. The description of the moon swinging on a black cord over the house is ominous imagery that can be compared to swinging an interrogation lamp. The description of the English cop show gives us a sense of familiarity and normalcy. The description of the broken bottles in the walls shows the violence the colonel is capable of. The luxurious dinner and small talk is an act of communion that builds tension. The commercial in Spanish shows us that this will most likely take place in a Spanish-speaking country. The parrot is a symbol of conformity and mimicry. There is an abrupt shift from the casual conversations at dinner to a violent and angry tone used by the colonel when the parrot said hello. The human ears represent the violence of the colonel's regime. Placing an ear in water brings to life the brutal rule. The colonel mocks the poet by thrusting his glass of wine in the air and saying, "Something for your poetry, no." After reviewing this poem, we notice it is unusual because it is written in prose, more like a story or documentary. Mostly simple declarative sentences are used. The speaker remains detached and uses a matter-of-fact tone throughout the entire poem. Let's recap our analysis in a soapstone chart. The subject of the poem is a violent, oppressive colonel who is trying to hide under a guise of normalcy. After doing further research, we were correct in stating that this poem took place in a foreign country that battled communism. The occasion is the El Salvador Civil War during the Cold War in May of 1978. The poet is a guest in the colonel's home. The audience are those interested in world affairs and the Civil War in El Salvador. The purpose of the poem is to convey the atrocities of the violent regime in El Salvador. The speaker is also the narrator of the poem. She is a guest in the colonel's home and seems to want to conduct a documentary or an interview. The speaker remains detached and merely presents the facts. However, the tone of the conversation between the colonel and his guests shifts from light-hearted to violent and mocking once he becomes angry at the parrot.